place is not just about having fun. Oh no, we also care about you, our local community.
Goeiemôre almal. Baie dankie dat julle gekom het. Baie dankie aan Latoya. Dit is vir ons 'n voorreg om jou hier te hê. Okay, ons by IK's, die doel van hoekom ons hierdie wellness sessions hou, is net om mense bewus te maak dat jou, not just your physical wellness, but your mental wellness is baie belangrik. Ek dink daar was so 'n cliché al die jare tussen ons leerlinge en veral onder die swart kultuur dat 'n mens moenie aandag gee op wat hier bo aangaan nie en selfs in jou hart en aangaan nie. So ons wil eintlik net mense bewus maak dat you need to take care of yourself. Be selfish, preserve yourself. So dit is eintlik die doel van ons gesprek vanoggend en ons wil graag hê dat ons audience moet saampraat, nie net ek en Toya nie, maar ons wil net 'n safe environment create where you feel that you can engage with us. So ek gaan sommer met die deur in die huis inval. Toya, vertel ons 'n bietjie van jouself en hoekom jy hier is vanoggend.
Okay. Môre almal. Ek is Latoya Stone en 'n Claude se dogter. Ek is 'n kind van die Dal. En ek dink dit is vir my regtig 'n groot voorreg om hier te wees, om in Heidedal te wees en om oor sulke goed te praat, want dit is waar ek vanaf is. Maar ek is 'n kliniese sielkundige. Ek help maar mense met, our psychological problems on a day-to-day basis. That's who I am, that's what I've been trained in. But I always say psychology chose me, I didn't choose it. Want voor ek nog geweet het wat ek wil doen, the word just came to mind. Voor ek geweet het wat is it. So for me it was almost set on my path. I'm a psychologist, I must help people. En ek dink hoe meer ek dit nou doen, hoe meer waardeer ek dit. It's sad that I think still in die kleerling en in die swart gemeenskap is dit nog iets wat, ek dink van name in die kleerling gemeenskap, nie iets wat mense aan fokus nie. En ek dink ek probeer maar dit van name in Kleershop waar ek is, om dit meer te encourage, dat ons breinmense kan na 'n sielkundige toe gaan en daar's niks fout daarmee nie. Ons hoef nie altyd sterk te wees nie, ons hoef nie altyd net to toughen up and man up and just move on. So ek dink dit is maar my passion, that's why I do what I do. Dit is nie moeilik nie, ek bedoel, dit is nie maklik nie, dit is baie moeilik, maar it's something that gives me purpose, that drives me and that fuels me. En ja, ek dink we're just tired of being strong, ons hoef nie altyd sterk te wees nie. So yes, in a nutshell, I'm a psychologist, I'm a daughter, I am a soon-to-be mother, and that's scary, and I think that's going to affect my mental health to a great degree. And I'm a wife, and yeah, a sister and an aunt, en ek is maar net iemand wat probeer 'n verskil maak in my own little way. In a nutshell, that's me.
Amazing.
Ja.
Baie dankie. Is vir my interessant die feit dat jy gesê het dat sielkunde het jou gevind. Ek dink van jongs daar af eintlik, of kom ons sê sekere goed begin vorm te neem hier van hoërskool af. En ek onthou ek wil altyd 'n danser gewees het. En altyd gewens dat as ek groot is wil ek my eie dansstudio het. But life happens. And mens word swanger, jy trou, jou lewe verander. En as jy jouself kom kry, then you never do what you wanted to do. So my vraag is eintlik, how do you handle that what ifs? Sien jy, en die ander ding wat ek ook wil vra is, you as a professional and as a wife, how do you juggle everything?
Do I juggle everything? Ek weet nie, and hopefully our ladies can also participate here. I think as a woman there's a lot of pressure on you to do everything and to be everything for everyone. So it's difficult. It really is. And for the longest time I was on my own. So I told you earlier on, ek het lank gewag om swanger te word om te trou because I didn't think number one, it would happen for me.
Ja.
En ek dink hoe ouer jy word, hoe skrik mens maar en dink dit gaan seker maar nie gebeur nie. So work was my focus. This all like work and family, like parents, that was my focus. And now that I'm a wife and soon to be mother, it's hard juggling those balls, and I still find myself wanting to find that balance, or have I found that balance? I don't even know. But at the end of the day, you have to prioritize. You need to prioritize what's important for you. Work is important, but my family comes first. But more than that, I am important. So I have to preserve myself to be everything to everyone. Because if I don't, then I'm not going to be able to juggle all those balls. So for me, prioritizing, I know after my dad passed, I took a keener interest in exercise, which has helped me stay sane. I think I'm one of the laziest people I know, but I'm at the gym at 5 a.m. I don't know how I do it. But that kept me sane through my grief period, I think. And then it just became a way of life for me. And that sort of sets the tone for my whole day. Then I feel more in control of prioritizing, scheduling, making my lists, and making time for what's important. So that, I think, is what's important, and that's how I try and manage everything. I don't know if I'm answering you. And then the first question you said was?
How do you handle the what ifs? Having that honest conversations with yourself and saying, okay, this isn't what my dream initially looked like.
I had a lot of what ifs. If I can share a story. When I was doing my master's, so when I went to study, my parents, we come from a middle class family. They couldn't exactly afford to send me to varsity, but I was fortunate enough to get a bursary for 4 years. But what they don't prepare you for is psychology is way longer than that. Yeah. So it's like 7 years, and what then? So I could do my undergrad and I could do my honors, and after that I didn't have money to continue studying, so I worked. But in the interim, people who I was doing my honors with were becoming psychologists, and I was like stuck in this ordinary job at Department of Health, and I could do it with my eyes closed, and I was like, okay, what if I never get that chance? What if I don't become a psychologist? What if this doesn't work out for me? And then after 4 years, I had a very supportive supervisor. He printed out the master's application forms and brought it to me and said, we're going to fill this out now. Yeah. And he pushed me, and I filled out the forms. And to get into the master's program, it's hundreds of applicants, hundreds. And then you go through the selection process and interviews for a week. And from that, they choose 10 people, 10 or 12 people to enter into the master's program. So again, I was like, what if I don't get in? Luckily, I did. In my class, we were 11. I was the only colored female. There were 2 black females, and the rest were white. And then again, what if I'm just the token colored girl they chose for this program? And in my master's year, my coordinator always had comments. If I had to see an adult patient and she made it clear she didn't want to go for therapy, then she would ask me, do you think it's because of the way you look? Do you think maybe you're a bit too funky? Do you think this? And it always, like, I would internalize those comments. Or we went on a master's trip, and then she would say, for the most part, we were in Joburg, I'm not too worried about the class misbehaving. I am just worried about Latoya. She looks like she's a party animal. Or, she'd say things like that. And I thought, okay, so it's that stereotypical colored thing, that colored people just drink, they just get drunk, they just fight, they are troublemakers, they don't have purpose, they don't have. So again, that doubt sunk in, what if I'm not actually here because I'm here on merit, or it's just I'm here because they had to put in someone of color. So I went into my internship as well, dealing with a lot of what ifs, because she even made a comment, I wonder how you would be in therapy with a white middle-aged Afrikaner man, because they're very conservative. And because of your look, how would he respond to it? And as life would have it, I moved to the Northwest. And in Klerksdorp, I did my 6 months internship at Klerksdorp and Sepong Hospital, and the other 6 months I did in Potch at the Northwest University, and you don't get more white than that.
Yes.
Like, I was like, this is just life showing me flames here. And 90% of my patients were white, Afrikaans-speaking people, and I was scared as hell. But they kept coming back. They kept coming back, and we ended our process, and they were better. And that year, as life would have it, that same lecturer brought her new class for the M1 trip, and where I was working at the PUC, they made a stop there. And my supervisor told her, Latoya is such a good intern. I think that she's actually a qualified psychologist already.
Wow.
And it took her hearing that from another white person to actually maybe have faith in me, I think. But that's when I stopped questioning what if, because I realized God places you where you're supposed to be and where you should be and where you deserve to be, in my opinion. And I stopped listening to the negatives and started more with positive self-talk, because what we think we say, what we say we do, what we do we become, And so I stopped that. And even now, the psychology world is very white. If you look at psychologists, it's middle-aged or older white men or females. And when I walk into a room, here comes Latoya with her tattoos and dresses the way she wants and whatever, and people side-eye you. But the what-ifs, how I handled it, I learned was to be authentic.
Yeah.
Was to just be myself, because I can't be anyone but me. I can't be anyone but who my parents raised me to be. My parents raised, in my opinion, all their children in a way that I think they can be proud of, to respect people, but to always be true to yourself, always. My father always told me, like, when you walk into a room, you show them who you are. Like, whatever that encompasses, you show them who you are. So that's what I try and do. And there's always going to be that what ifs. We're always going to doubt, am I on the right path? Should I still stay on this path? Especially when things come our way that are stumbling blocks, you tend to doubt yourself. But I feel like if your authentic self, then you can't stray from that, because you still need to align who you are, what your expectations are, whatever society's expectations are. You need to align that with your values and what you've set out for yourself. And if you stay true to that, then I think even if the what-ifs come, you can still handle it, because we're human. We are going to doubt ourselves sometimes, but it won't necessarily make us stray from our path. But it took a lot of people making me feel insecure to learn that. And I think sometimes it takes that. You have to feel a bit insecure and also take a step back and question yourself for you to move on. So it hasn't been an easy journey. It hasn't. I've doubted myself a lot. Sometimes I'm still like, what am I doing? Should I be here? Sometimes you have that, but I feel like I wouldn't still be here if I didn't deserve it, but if I also didn't put in the work. And I still just try and remain true to who I am as a person, but also as a therapist, because then that's it. Then people will come back to you. So, ek praat baie, sorry.
Okay, ek gaan nou 'n bietjie ons conversation in 'n ander rigting invat, nê? En as ons dink aan mans en vrouens, ons elkeen hanteer goed anders. Maar vir jare was dit gewees, die vrou se plek is in die kombuis en sy moet kinders grootmaak. But the dynamics in the relationship has changed a lot. Die vrou bring net soveel na die tafel soos wat die man doen. So my vraag is eintlik aan ons audience en aan Toya, how do you start renegotiating that dynamics in the relationship? Hoe vra jy vir jou man om te sê, okay, ons albei het gewerk, hoekom moet ek gaan kos maak? Sien jy, hoekom moet ek die kinders alleen klaarmaak vir skool? And I think that is valid questions wat jy in die verlede nie eens gewaag het om eens daaraan te dink nie. But we're living in a new era, and it's not a sign of disrespect but it's like I have the right to say no. And why am I being seen as selfish for saying no? So,
Ek dink vir my is die vraag maklik om te antwoord because of how I was raised again. Ek kan onthou toe ons jonger was. My dad, may his soul rest in peace. Hy het baie geduld gehad, baie met my mommy en haar sisters. My mommy het 4 sisters. En ek dink hulle was almal getroud met my pa, regtig. My pa was altyd die enigste man. En daar was 'n tyd toe ons jonger was. My mommy, ek dink het by Checkers gewerk op die tyd en my daddy was by Musgrave, maar hy het altyd vroeër huis toe gekom as my ma. En dan is ek en Nobie en al my niggies daar, want my ma se 2 susters het ook kom bly saam met ons en hulle kinders en al daai. En dan het my daddy ons gebad in die aand en hy het ons hare gevleg in die aand in. En my voorkop het altyd geblink van die bruilkrem, want hy het altyd in gesit. Maar dit was sy rol. So as my mami van die werk afkom, dan is dit daarom gedoen en sy hoef nie te worry oor vir ons, om vir ons in die bad in te sit en al daai nie. So ek dink it's like one of my fondest memories, om in die aand te sit en my daddy vleg ons hare en al daai. En as Leanne of Mondile daar was, dan was hulle hare ook gevleg en hulle was ook gebad. So dit was altyd gedoen. En ek kan onthou tot Musgrave toemaak, het my pa soos vir meer as 'n jaar nie gewerk nie. So my mami het gewerk en hy was by die huis en my pa so ons kon nie bekostig op die tyd om iemand te kry om die huis skoon te maak, want as een minder inkomste in die huis en my daddy het huis skoon gemaak en hy het gekook. So as my mami by die huis kom, dan is dit gedoen. En ek dink hy het my gewys, but my father was a very manly man. En as jy my pa ken, that's who he was. Hy was 'n man. But in the house, het hy nie geworry oor dit nie. He did what he was supposed to do because my mother was not there to do it. So ek dink dit het dit makliker gemaak vir my. And when I then realized one day, okay, I want to get married, het ek altyd gesê ek wil iemand soos my daddy hê. And is that not how it is for all girls? I think jy wil iemand soos jou pa hê. En het Lance altyd gesê, jy gaan stok oud word op hy rak, want jy gaan nie iemand soos daddy kry nie. And when I met my husband, one of the first things I said is, he reminds me of my dad. But I just said it to myself. And then my mom, the one day we were driving, me, him, and my mom, and then my mom said, your dad would have loved him. And I asked why, and she said, because he reminds me of your dad. And that was confirmation for me that I chose right, and I waited, and it was worth the wait. So for me, that conversation was easy to have because my husband cooks better than I do, I think, even. Wow. And and he cleans, and he's very handy. I'm grateful because it was just him and his brother growing up. So his mom taught them very young to cook, to clean, to do all of these things and not be dependent on a woman to do it. So now I'm reaping the rewards of his mother's upbringing, or his mom raising him in that manner. But it is difficult to have those conversations with men, especially I think who weren't raised that way and who are very patriarchal and very traditional and see the gender roles as very fixed and rigid. Yeah. But it's a conversation I don't think we can shy away from much longer because we do bring in money and we do work. Yeah. And sometimes the woman does work longer hours than the man. So why can't we just help each other out? You know, why can't we just say, well, just tonight, can you please make something to eat because I'm going to be a little late? Yeah. And sometimes it won't sit well with that person, but it's conversations we can't shy away from forever because then as a woman, you will always feel, my plek is nou net in die kombuis, kaalvoet en swanger and all those things that we were taught. And that's not how it should be because if I am your equal, then let us be equals in all senses, you know. Let us be equal in the sense as well that in the house, you can put the kids in the bath while I am then doing something else. Yeah. You can't be, let's call it privileged, to just sit and do nothing. But I can honestly tell you there are men who are not ready to have these conversations. In therapy, there are men who come and who say, my wife must do this. I bring in the money. I work hard. She has to fulfill her role in the house. So it is difficult, I think, also depending on culture, ethnicity, all of those things. I can tell you a Tswana man will be more willing than probably a Zulu man to do certain things like that.
Yeah.
Because they're very, very patriarchal. So it's difficult, but it's conversations we can't shy away from, and it's stuff that we need to talk about, and it's stuff that we need to educate people about, to have more of those conversations. I think I'm just fortunate in that regard that ek het die ander kant gesien, because what my father did in the house didn't make him less of a man. In fact, it made him more of a man in my eyes, because he could see there's a gap here and I can fill in that gap, and I can do what I need to do but still be the head of this household. Because in that time my dad was not working. I don't even think I noticed it. I didn't even think, even my mother as well, she handled it so well. She never reminded him, ek bring nou die geld in, of ek is nou die een wat werk, and she never ever reminded him of that. So she also contributed in a huge way to still making him feel like the head of the house. Because for a man as well, and I think it also goes back to how we are socialized. Because men are taught, jy's 'n man as jy geld inbring. If you can put food on the table, if you provide for your family. But you're also a man if you can nurture your family, if you can show your children love, if you can do things. But because men are now raised in that way, they think dis al wat my 'n man maak. And anything else, it doesn't really matter. So I think we need to change also our conversations and how we raise our boys, how we raise men in society. To think that yes, you can provide and protect and do all those things for your family, but you can also do other things which make you a man. So ek dink daar's nog 'n lang pad om te gaan. Nog 'n baie lang pad.
Definitely.
So we need to just start changing how we speak about it, I think.
So my question is then, if you have to have this conversation, where do you start, or how do you actually approach it? Van sekere goed wat jy sal dink as vrou is common sense is actually nie so common sense vir 'n man nie. So how do you start this conversation?
There's no easy way. I can tell you the first week of dating my husband, it was load shedding, it was a Friday night, and I said to him, let's talk. And I think, yes, he was scared. Hey? And I said, let's write down questions and ask each other questions. I'm that type of person. And I was very surprised because he asked me things like, how can I respect you? How do you want me to show you love? What does love look like to you? And when we asked each other those questions, I was like, okay, I'm very impressed with myself and my choice here. But I think that in our first week of dating, we had difficult conversations, and we spoke about finances. We spoke about, what if I bring in more money than you? How will that affect your sense of being, your ego? What if we have challenges, And he's a very practical person, and I'm a very emotional person. And we discussed conflict. How will we handle that? Because I am very emotional. You are more, let's breathe and wait this out, and let's let the emotions go away and then deal with it. So I think, firstly, bringing up the conversations are not easy, but if you can't with your partner have difficult conversations, what are you doing, actually? Because you're supposed to be able to have those conversations. And it's not supposed to be nice, and it's supposed to be uncomfortable. It should be uncomfortable. But if we stay in our comfort zone, you're always going to feel like, ek doen nou alles in die huis. Ek kook, ek maak skoon, ek was goed, ek doen alles, and nobody's helping me. And you see relationships like that, where the woman is always tired and say, klaar, but she'll never address it with the person. So if you don't ever address it, and if you don't express your needs, then how will that person know? And we also can't always blame the man and say, my help my nie. Because if you're not going to complain or say, sometimes I need help, I gaan nie kan lees wat gaan aan op
Ja.
jou gedagtes nie. Like you're saying, we think differently. What's common sense to me is not common sense to you.
Yeah.
So like I tell my husband, please can you help me with this? And then he'll say, why do you have an attitude when you're asking me? Like, because I didn't realize I need to help you. Like, just ask me nicely and I'll do it. And then I
Yeah.
realized, okay, he hasn't seen that I've been hinting. Like,
Yeah.
he doesn't pick up hints. So let me just ask him straightforward, you know, and be nice about it. So that's the thing. What is common sense to us is not common sense to them. So we can't assume that they can see we're struggling, they can see we're tired. If you're not going to express your need, they're not going to know. And the status quo remains.
Yeah.
So I think that's what, number one, we need to start being comfortable with having uncomfortable conversations. And it's not nice, and there will be a bit of conflict, a bit of arguing, a bit of back and forth, but it's okay, because that's how you find common ground.
Yeah.
But I think fundamentally, on a deeper level, we need to just change how we raise our boys. I think olden days are gone where men's role is this, women's role is this. Change how we speak to our sons, how we raise them. I was even telling Carmen earlier on, my husband has a 10-year-old son, and he's so harsh with him sometimes, like very harsh. And I had to tell him, change how you approach him, because he will tell me who he has a crush on at school, but then he won't tell my husband, and then he'll say, but why is he telling you and not me? Then I said, because of the approach. And since he's changed his approach, even when Kumo's in trouble, he will ask him, what happened? First tell me what happened at school. What led to this? And then afterwards he'll say, okay, how do we address this? And he slowly over time started telling me, I can feel my bond with my son is different, but it's a deeper bond. And I said, because you don't always have to be harsh with boys. Sometimes you can be soft with boys, and it doesn't take away from them being a boy.
Yeah.
So we need to also change how we raise our sons, I think, and show them that holistically, a man can be a lot of things and doesn't just have to provide and work in the garden and do all the manual labor. But a boy can also help out in the kitchen, and it doesn't make him less of a boy or less of a man. So I think fundamentally we also have to change that, but we also have to be comfortable with having these uncomfortable conversations.
Ek dink vir my is hy 'n wake-up call van baie keer kom die attitude eers en dan vry. So, yes, mens moet nie dink jou partner moet kan lei en vang nie, want baie keer doen hulle nie. So, ja. Okay. Ek wil graag weet, nee. The moment you bring I and me into a conversation, dan klink dit onmiddellik vir die volgende persoon. Jy's iemand enetjies vir jou selfsugtig. So, ek wil weet, ons gesprek gaan, what about me? Hoe kom 'n mens by 'n punt waar jy comfortably kan sê nee, sonder dat die volgende persoon moet offended voel?
I think I read the other day, it says, are we inherently not selfish beings as people? And maybe we are, but I don't think it's a bad thing. Ek dink mense, we've made it okay to be martyrs. Ek gaan maar dit doen vir die ander persoon, al beteken dit ek gaan nou nie okay is nie, of al bedoel dit hulle gaan nou nie vir my in 'n slegte lig sien nie, en ek gaan maar nou as 'n nice persoon gesien wees, because we have this need to be liked by people and loved by people and accepted by people. But inherently, maybe we're selfish beings, but it's okay. You need to have boundaries, I think, number one. Self-preservation, which is what we want to know about. If you Google or look at the dictionary or whatever definition of self-preservation, it literally means to preserve yourself, to not cause anything to bring harm or hurt your way, or prevent yourself from being killed, literally. And then if we take it a step further and say, okay, now I'm alive, I'm okay, I'm free from harm, but what is self-care then? What does that entail? And then we have to look at it in the sense of, I can't do for others if I don't do for myself first. So yes, it will sound selfish, it will sound, die persoon dink baie van hulle self, is net ek die hele tyd. But if your tank is empty, you can't do for the next person.
Yeah.
So eventually you're going to have to be comfortable with saying, no, I can't. But I know it's not easy for some people to do that.
Yeah.
If we look after ourselves physically, spiritually, emotionally, psychologically, in our professional realms, and then we can comfortably feel like, okay, I'm in a space where that is sorted and I'm looking after myself in those areas. What can I do for other people in those areas?
Yeah.
I think number one. But if you also don't have the ability to say no, you're just going to be giving, 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 and nothing is coming back, and you can't pour from an empty cup. So dan gaan jy crash, and then your body will start telling you, jy kan nie meer nie.
Yeah.
Like our bodies, if we're tired, if we just keep giving, dan gaan jy kopseer kry, jy gaan magpyn kry, jy siek, jy het nou sommer flu die hele tyd, you're this. Your bodies literally tell you, but now it's time to just take a time out, take a step back, and look after yourself again. If that's not a way of saying, okay, I need to look after me, because our bodies communicate that to us, then what else will tell us? So I think at the end of the day, yes, it sounds selfish to the next person. If Carmen asks me, Latoya, can you do this for me? And I say no, Carmen might think I'm being selfish. But if I say no, I'm just not able to right now. Maybe, can we look at it tomorrow, perhaps? Can we discuss it tomorrow? Today, I'm just not in the right space. So if you can't just say no outright, then just say, well, today I'm not okay. Can we try tomorrow? Maybe that's a gentler version of doing it. But at the end of the day, you need to have boundaries. Because if you're just going to say yes to everything, people will take advantage of that. People will say, Carmen is 'n staatmaker, ek kan altyd na Carmen toe gaan. And not even think, but maybe Carmen's also going through her own stuff as well. So I think we need to be able to be comfortable and learn to say no and realize that it's not something selfish necessarily. But we can only do that if people know our boundaries. If they don't know what our boundaries are, they're going to test it and they're going to constantly knock on your door and ask for something. And you can't blame them because you haven't taught them anything differently. So boundaries are very important, I feel, and people struggle with that. So I think it's important to realize saying no is not always selfish. It's a form of self-care. And if we see it as a form of self-care, then we realize, okay, and what are our intentions behind this? I even saw the other day, I was looking for something, I can't even remember, and they gave examples of selfishness versus self-care. And one of the examples was self-care could be taking time for yourself to meditate, to relax, because your body needs that. Whereas selfishness would be isolating yourself from people and not mixing with them just because you don't want to. There's no specific reason. So you always balance that as well and say, what is my intention behind this? Am I doing this because I want to take away from Carmen, or it's going to be at her loss or expense? Or am I doing it because this is what I need as a person for myself so that tomorrow I can be there for Carmen? And I think that's the difference, what is selfish and what is self-care and what is my intention behind it.
Okay, so ek wil net 'n samevatting doen van wat ons nou alles bespreek het. Ek weet ons almal het we have our regrets. Things that we think, okay, what if this happened or did not happen? All of us suffer from internal or external pressure, and most of the time we don't know how to deal with it and accept it as the norm. And at work, we don't always realize that my world cannot function if I'm not okay. And soos wat jy gesê het, self-care is baie belangrik. And we should know the difference between that self-care and being selfish. So Latoya, ek wil eintlik net 'n laaste vraag vir jou vra. Dat what tool do you think we can take or we can use on this journey of self-preservation?
I think there's no one specific thing really, but if we come from the premise of I matter too, dan dink ek dis belangrik, want if I'm not okay, my husband won't be fine, my kids won't be fine, my family won't be fine. So I think that's the one thing, that looking after yourself is not a bad thing. And maybe that's why I said earlier on, we raised that as ek nou nie dit gaan doen nie, then they're going to think badly of me. They're going to, we have this need to be liked. And it doesn't always have to be that. So I think we also have to measure, if I can put it that way, our expectations versus what society's is, what friends, what family, what their expectations are of us. And I feel strongly if their expectations don't align with what I want for myself, then it's fine. Soos Konna gesê het, as ek vir iemand gaan sê nee en hulle wil nie weer in my sirkel is nie, then your expectations don't align with mine. And you actually don't want what's best for me. Because if you can't handle me saying I can't do this, because I don't have the capacity to do it for you right now, and you take offense to that, do you really want what's best for me? So I think one tool is really aligning what we have for ourselves and our goals with what society or other people expect of us, and does that coordinate? Does it align with each other or not? But also changing our mindsets in that looking after myself, taking care of myself, is not selfish. It's just so that I can be a better friend, sister, wife, mother, whatever it might be, so I can be better for other people. So in essence, it's going to benefit the next person if I put myself first too. And I think also to remember that as women, perhaps, and sorry, Angela, I'm not excluding you, but just as women, because we are more, I think, selfless, and we are taught that die kinders kom eerste, gaan winkels toe, ek nodig skoene, maar ek gaan maar nou vir die kinders iets koop. You know, that guilt as well. To also be okay with that sometimes you can do for yourself too, and it doesn't take away from what you're doing for others, for your children, for your family. But it starts with how we think and how we view ourselves. So that for me is probably very important. And I mentioned earlier on, just holistically as a person, physically, mentally, psychologically, those kind of things, are we okay? And where do I need to put the work in? Because we need to see where the shortcomings are or where the gaps or pitfalls are, and to try and work on those things. But lastly, if I can just maybe say, as people, express your needs. Like, if I need help, express that I have a need to be helped in this area. Because sometimes we also feel the need to do things on our own. Ek moet dit doen, ek is seker ek sal dit reg kry and whatever. But sometimes it's also okay to ask for help, because it's also a form of self-preservation, and it's also a form of self-care. Want anders pak jy alles op jou skouers and then you feel burnt out at the end of the day. So we also have to be okay with asking for help, asking for guidance, seeking clarity in certain instances. But at the end of the day, if you're not okay, the next person in your life or in your immediate circle is not going to be okay. So if we change our thinking with regards to that, maybe it will help.
And I think that's why it's so important that we need to talk about these things. In Latoya, wil enkel net vir jou dankie sê. Thank you for availing yourself. Dankie dat ons die honest conversations kon hê. En asseblief, Latoya se besonderhede gaan gelys word. So kontak haar asseblief as jy voel jy het 'n sessie nodig. En ja, baie dankie namens EK's en ons span. En ons net vir jou sê baie dankie. Remember, EK's is the place to be, the place where business, wellness and music meet. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.